What's going on, guys? Jesus Overall Apologetics here. Today I'm here with Tim Bukowski and the
Hello.
Christian Anarchist.
Hello.
And today we're just going to be discussing claims that a new atheist like to make against the Bible. And we'll probably be discussing other topics. And there will be a next episode next week on dealing with the scientific claims for God and the so-called evidences against God. So yeah. What issue would you guys like to open up with against that atheist claim against the Bible? Anyone
The
in
first,
particular?
I don't know if CA had anything, but I was going to
No,
bring
you
up.
go ahead.
Okay. I think that the most common form of unbelieving, counter-apologetic against the New Testament as a whole are arguments from silence. I think that arguments from silence against things like the darkness at the crucifixion or other things around the life of Jesus are often repeated by not only um, layman atheists, but also um, Muslims and other groups of non-Christian origin. And yeah, I think that arguments from silence surrounding the life of Jesus are a topic that I, I think needs to be that can be handled in a number of different ways. I know that many Christians have responded with secular references to certain things, and I think that in my Christ Myth Refuted series, I definitely dealt with that. But I also think that we need to be asking questions of more historical significance, such as are these things that are not reported, are they things that shouldn't have been mentioned? So I'm talking here about things like the slaughter of the innocents in in Luke, or the darkness at the crucifixion, or a number of things like that, which are only singly attested in the New Testament and not attested in other places. So I think that that's a major objection that I see very often especially among Christ mythers and people who are irrationally skeptical against the New Testament as a whole.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of expand on that. The lay atheists, they don't like to go into the historical context of when the books of the Bible were written. And so Luke, obviously writing to a different group than, say, Matthew or John was, they don't take that into consideration. Dr. Michael Heiser, if you guys are familiar with him, he goes into great detail on stuff like this. He is mainly in the New Old Testament, but kind of applied the same standards. We can apply the same standards to the New Testament in regards to how the different groups of people would have seen the texts. So if CA would like to share anything.
Well, I mean, when it comes to, like, yeah, as you say, there's like arguments from silence on the matter. I mean, to me, you can do the same kind of thing with any other group of people. Like, I remember one of the claims that, Bart Ehrman makes in his book in regards to the whole thing is, if people are going to say the same thing about Jesus, then we can apply the same standards about Julius Caesar and Socrates, because you do have Socrates mythicists and such, that there's only one source that seemed to be really speaking much about him in great detail, and that others just, aren't that much reliable. So we have those kinds of mythicists out there as well, because they have the argument from silence. But no historian to this day really doubts the existence of people like Socrates or Caesar. And this is not even going to the Bible at this point. This is just using the secular sources. Armin's a secularist. He's a humanist. And even he agrees that people like Jesus, Caesar, and, Socrates had existed. So it really, to say simply argument from silence is not going to do well, because then you have to change how we do history, change how we have historically seen things and how history actually looks. You basically have to remake it, have to repaint it.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some postmodernism influences in the field of history among literary critics such as Ehrman, Carrier, etc., and then even more amongst people who really don't know what they're talking about. The other thing that I was going to point out is that Tim McGrew, who is a philosopher at Western Michigan University, who has done a lot of work on the reliability of the New Testament, he's a Christian apologist and scholar, and he has recently made the point that just because something like, let's just take the example of the slaughter of the innocents or something that is reported in the Gospels. Just because we would, if we had a similar story or source for these events in a secular source, while that would be would be very good evidence for the historicity of that event, the fact that we don't have that doesn't necessarily mean that it would be just as good evidence against the historicity of the event. And then he draws the analogy of a spider in a coffee shop, that if he sees a spider in the coffee shop, that's very good evidence that there is a spider in the coffee shop. But if he doesn't see a spider in the coffee shop, that's not very good evidence at all that there is not a spider in the coffee shop, that the spider could be hiding in all kinds of places. And I think that that's very important to point out, that the scales really aren't equal in terms of evidence for something and evidence against something.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
that's the thing too. Like, I agree with that analogy, and I would even use that. But then, for though that, I guess the one thing that people could point out, because like I said, I've used that type of argumentation before, and it all boils down to like this one question, and I think should consist of rather than accepting that the person existed or not, with arguments of silence, saying, well, at least the person like Socrates or the spider never claimed to be God. I mean, would you? I mean, that's literally the response that they argue as to, well, this is why we can accept Socrates and the spider instead of Jesus.
Yeah, but we're not. But the thing is that they're arguing against the very existence of an event or a person. There's no a priori supernatural conclusions that you have to make about that. So that's not really a response to the argument.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you guys watched the debate between Robert Price and Bart Ehrman on
I was there.
whether you were there. You got to watch that live.
Yeah.
Oh, must be nice.
I'm from Milwaukee, so that was quite the experience.
Yeah, well, none of those debates really happened where I'm from, but yeah, back on topic. I thought Bart Ehrman really put with the Jesus mythicism, and also, but that it's still a thing with like Richard Carrier, and I don't know why Robert Price, a biblical scholar of over 40 years, even would begin to question if Jesus existed or not.
Because he's mostly just a postmodern liberal atheist.
I think he said something like, if the Holocaust wasn't reported by as many as it is, that 2 generations from now, we could possibly say that it didn't occur. I mean, it's just a postmodernism gone off the rails.
Yep.
Hold on. Hold on. I'm gonna have to mute my mic one second.
Cool.
So you guys.
One of the things that I find interesting about the whole thing with the new atheists, at least the ones that follow the ideas, is that notice that for example, let's start with the 4 horsemen that came out. What did you have? You have basically a evolutionary biologist, a philosopher, a journalist, and a basically like a neurologist or psychologist. Right. So by these standards, which qualifies you in the field of scholarship in historicity, exegetical text work, all these kinds of things?
I mean, I think that's the point where all of them have just punt to Ehrman at that point. He seems to be their go-to guy. So I guess Ehrman would be the honorary fifth horseman.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, is like when it comes to Ehrman, some of them now are starting to kind of shift away from that, because now you have some people like what's his name, like Sam Harris. I remember in the God That Never Was, he basically came straight out mythicist at that point.
Right.
So definitely you have a problem with like Harris on this issue and such, while the others just don't really seem to care.
Dennett's more interested in religion in general. Hitchens is unfortunately dead. And Dawkins is...
Yeah, Dawkins is a big mythicist.
Dawkins has gone back and forth on it. I'm not exactly sure what his position is. Not that I really care, since he's not a scholar. But I think he has shifted back and forth on that position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, another thing with Dawkins. No, you go.
I was about to say, I mean, I wouldn't even put Ehrman as like a fifth new atheist, because he's clearly just identified himself as agnostic.
That's true. That's true.
But while that is a form of atheism, I mean, he's willing to accept the possibility of the case. So he's not like so he's not like very adamant against it and such. And I don't know why Muslims would be citing or going to him.
Oh, especially after...
But that's a topic for another day, though.
Right. Especially after how Jesus became God. I mean, they cite that book that has a whole chapter on how the resurrection was the centrality of early Christian belief. So, I mean, yeah, they're so blatantly inconsistent that it's not even funny.
Yeah, like the channels Yahya Snow and Muslim by Choice. I'm subscribed to them I just like to see what they post and see like how much out of context text they can pull out of videos. All it is just James White and Bart Ehrman, although they don't want to show what they claim about the Quran or Hadith or anything like that, or against their own religion.
Pretty much. I mean, when it comes to like Yahya Snow, one of my videos in response to a guy named Hamza Mayat was partway also a response to Yahya, because I heard of the video through him, where it's basically like he has the whole Christians believe Trinitarian Jesus killed the Amalekites or ordered the slaughter of Amalekites, and has like a picture of Jay Smith with the eyes wide open and his mouth covering, or his hands covering over his mouth, and it's like, the little dramatic thing, and it just, very much tries to use strong words, saying Christians believe in Trinitarian Jesus killing people and all these kinds of things, and it's just a lot of emotional stuff. But it's like that's the same thing. What kind of like I notice is the pattern that the Muslims display and the new atheists display is the same level of exegetical kind of expertise you get, and that's about as close as you can get to it, is that it's emotional pleas and not treating the text fairly, just like you wouldn't want me to treat, as a Muslim, you wouldn't want me to treat the Quran unfairly, and as for anything written by Darwin in his letters, or his book on evolution, you wouldn't want me to take those things out of context and make.
I'm sure if you looked hard enough that you could somehow piece together that Darwin was a young Earth creationist or something that's totally inconsistent. But the way that
some people have actually made that claim, and as well as some saying that he was a white supremacist and a racist who wanted to see the black race die, apparently. And there's just no evidence of this, but there are people that can look at that, make the conclusions, and you have the atheist say, no, that's not what he's saying, because if we examine the
and they harmonize.
Yes, and look at the context, you understand that what he's actually saying. Just like we can say, look at the Bible and its context.
Right.
So it really shows you a bit of the inconsistency in regards to standards.
Yeah. So another topic I feel we should probably touch on is slavery in Exodus, because
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that Matt Dillahunty, all the replies that are out there on
Mm-hmm.
slavery, he just keeps pounding at it. Not just him, obviously, a bunch more
Right.
atheists just keep pounding slavery, 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 slavery. So I feel like we should
Mm-hmm.
probably touch on that a little bit.
Yep. Well, here's the thing: when it comes to say, like, especially during the, I wouldn't say necessarily in Exodus, but I do know, I think, especially like in Leviticus and Deuteronomy, there are some laws that seem to indicate more than just simply um, the slavery, as in the servitude. That was certainly around. That was certainly something and could be done. But what we do see for that actually gets treated in the regular form um, of slavery is not really more of a man stealer or a capturing kind of thing, but rather more of a penalty or a punishment. And
Yeah,
that
and
is,
they were taken care of pretty well too.
well, it's
Uh,
basically this: the prisoners of war basically were those kinds of people, the people that lost to the Israelites in certain battles, and if there were some men that were kept alive, as well as some of the women. So there was some form of that, but that was, also a bit of a common practice thing at the same time. I mean, some of both the different nations had their own kinds of ways of doing that. And it was just how you ended up in dealing with prisoners of war instead of just simply keeping them locked up in a cell. You actually would, you know, get them to uh, be involved in the community and get them involved rather um, you know you just get a place there, or you're working for some family or something like that. You're put as in what is considered a slave um, at that point. But that's not the same thing as where in the African slave trade people would just go around capturing innocent civilians and then pawn them off to money. No, if this was done during war, that's the only slaves you can get. You're not trading them in for anything. You got them, and that's your keep basically. And this was just during the context of war, and that was what happens at the end. They're basically lost, and that's their punishment as a result.
Yeah, Andy Bannister does a great job of going into lots of detail on slavery, and Tim did a great job of it in his debate with Michael Atwood. I don't know if you guys saw that. Well, I know obviously Tim, but see, I don't know if you saw that.
No, I'm
He
more of
basically,
seeing the theological aspect of debates.
yeah,
I'm not like the like any debates with Mike Lacona and evidentialist historicity kind of things. I haven't really seen much of those, with exception to the Bart Ehrman Price debate.
yeah, and Tim, Tim did a great job in his debate with Michael Atwood, the Muslim, from a while back. And as far as I'm aware, after that debate, he deconverted,
Oh,
is now an atheist.
I get so much hate for that. I can't even believe it. I get 6 or 7 emails a week from Muslims who are blaming me for his deconversion.
So he deconverted afterwards.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I said I'm sorry. I mean,
Well, in the words of the Muslims, alhamdulillah.
amen. Exactly. Uh, I mean, I didn't think that he. I don't know. I mean, I thought I won, but okay. If he deconverted, it's not my fault.
Exactly. Speaking of which, if you ever need a couple more of those guys, I know a few a couple I'll be able to send your way. One of them actually, I think you'd be able to handle perfectly because he's just about as well researched and informed as you are.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
I'm always up for a debate.
he even becomes a handful for me. And I think he's what, like maybe 16 or 17 or maybe even 15. I don't know, but I know he's young, but he's got a very big emphasis and passion for doing what he does. Like when he goes into the whole thing about like Old Testament or New Testament, he tries to, like the whole, what was it? The I am passages and such. He tries to argue, instead of, the Abdullah, uh, Osama Abdullah argument of saying in the beginning, before he was, I was, or something like that. He actually says like it's a similar thing with Moses, and I think in Deuteronomy where
Oh,
Moses.
right, where Moses says that ego I me at some point.
No, he doesn't say ego I me.
No,
He basically like it's like saying these I speak to you. This is just Moses speaking, and at one point he's like quoting the scripture where it says, "I am," where basically he's
he's
speaking as if
quoting
he's
something.
God, but he doesn't say the it is written kind of thing. So he kind of basically is like he's a prophet that's used as a mouthpiece for God. So likewise in that context, in a Jewish context, Jesus is just being a prophet, a mouthpiece where he's letting God speak through him, but he's not claiming to actually be him. Otherwise, if that's the case, then you have to say Moses was also God. So that one kind of got to me, and I had to even go as far as looking from the commentaries from
I'm looking at the
JPS.
NA28 here.
The what?
I'm looking to see what the verb is in the Greek to see if Jesus is referring to himself. He's was. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's
Right. But like I said, he'll go over to different places, and
yeah.
but he's really good with the stuff. He actually will quote the scholars compared to the other guy I debated.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, I was gonna read a quote from what book is in my Encyclopedia of Cultural Anthropology on the topic of slavery in ancient Near East cultures. So I guess I'll give a bit of background. Basically, they're talking about how unique slavery was, how unique New World Western slavery is compared to the rest of slavery, the word slavery and all of humankind, that it carries such an emotional hot button that when you bring up slavery, you think of American slavery in the South, as opposed to what the word had meant prior to that. And because of this, cultural scholars don't really have a set in stone definition of slavery. I'll read the quote now. The reason is that the term slavery is evocative rather than analytical, calling to mind a loose bundle of diagnostic features. These features are mainly derived from the recent experience with the Western experience with slavery, that of the Southern United States, Latin America, etc. Western images of slavery have been haphazardly constructed out of the representations that experience in the 19th century and later novels, etc. From a global cross-cultural and historical perspective, however, New World slavery was a unique conjunction of features. In brief, most varieties of slavery did not exhibit the elements that were dominant in the New World, which was slaves as property and commodities, and their use exclusively as labor and their lack of freedom. So I think that we need to take off our Western glasses when we hear the term slavery when talking about ancient Near East cultures. We can't just think of, Alabama in 1860.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And of course, I think that most fundy atheists really don't care about context, or especially the historical context.
No, and that's the thing too, is that as I was going to say, that's the one thing I noticed is treat the text like it's supposed to be, and how would you have understood a certain word back then, or how would you have written to them back then? Like what language would you have incorporated? This is actually a interesting challenge that Mike Kaiser and my friend General actually tried once making towards atheists in regard to because he's a concordist, meaning he believes that the Bible is in line with mainstream science. Well, I think personally it's a bit inconsistent based on some other things he said. He does make an interesting point, though, is that he wants basically to issue a challenge saying that he wants the atheists to think of a way to relay scientific truths, but do it in the language and the context and use words in which these Israelites would be familiar with, and try to do that in reconstructed text and able to do so. None have been able to do that because it is a difficult task, and one of which at that point in time should not even been attempted until later on, once we have better understanding of certain things. So they're just given with what they had to deal with. And one of the things we also have to keep in mind, with that being said, going back to slavery, that the idea of the man capturing didn't come during the Old Testament time, at least from as far as my knowledge goes. It did sometime in the New Testament era, and that's where we definitely see that is counted as one of the sins, I believe, mentioned in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 9. So I'm gonna try to turn to that real quick because it uses a specific term. It doesn't say the slave master or any of those kinds of people, but it uses a context that I think you might find interesting, because that's what makes the distinction between the slavery of back then compared to the biblical times. So 1 Corinthians chapter 6. Let's see here. Is it? I guess. Oh yeah, there it is. Wait, hang on. No, it was great. It was the other passage. It's in Timothy, and I'm trying to remember where that is. 1 Timothy 1:10, I think. I had it, and then all of a sudden I just blew it.
I'm flipping there.
Apologize on that one, folks. Yeah, for whoremongers and the sales of for men stealers, right there. The term that's used for men stealers in 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 10, that's the term in which we would call someone who goes and captures men so that they may be traded in as slaves. And in fact, this is something I actually brought up to an atheist, that if you look in the early church writings that are within the 1st to 2nd century, you see this pattern in which people such as Clement of Rome and others, and say, like, I think it's the Didache or something like that, where they have made mention that they some Christians would sell themselves into slavery as bargaining chips to get other people out of it. That was basically it, is if you could sell yourself into slavery, and the actual principle in terms of the slave trade, you could basically get someone out, because a person equals the worth of another person, and that was basically one way of being able to do it. So Christians, with the virtue of self-sacrifice and humility, would give themselves up just like Christ gave himself up, and they had that principle to get other people out. So they had this fuel for slowly getting people free of the whole exchange.
I'm thinking about how that's going to relate to some of the other social things of the ancient world. I think that would be like improving their honor status, correct?
In which one?
What was it? The reference in what was the verse that you quoted?
Oh, was it? Wait, it was one. It was 1 Timothy 1:10, right?
1:10.
Yeah, I thought you were about to say 1 Timothy 1:10. Like, hey,
Yeah.
I didn't know we had Donald Trump in the house.
Yeah.
It's 2 Corinthians. There's the whole 9 yards.
2 Corinthians
people.
walked into a bar.
2 Corinthians walked into a bar. It was huge. It's huge.
Okay.
This is going to be the biggest church ever. There's no church like it. I could show you like 10 other churches. They're not as big as my church. We're going to make the Baptist church great again. We're going to build a big church, and the Presbyterians are going to pay for it. It's going to be huge. All right, I'm done
Yeah,
with
they're talking about property laws, good property. So yeah, I think that okay. So right. So Timothy is talking about all of those who have. I mean, no, that Paul's talking about how everyone has broken the law, and then for these that it's reserved for these people. And oh yeah, so he is talking about how they have these people of low honor status, um, and that it's good for people of low honor status, and that the honor shame aspect of the ancient world was such a huge part. So I was looking to see if that corresponded there, and it does.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right, so
Highlight that real quick.
I guess another trick I will do there with those who want to bring up slavery who are new atheists, I guess I would ask them why slavery is wrong under their worldview.
That's the other question is, and this goes back to the other one. I mean, whatever we talked about earlier about several things. You know, why is it wrong to believe or to have these kinds of things in the text? What is if it's so wrong and that's your objection to it? Why is it wrong from your perspective? Because think about it. If they're as an atheist who have no belief in a deity, um, they what's the standard for it?
Right.
There are some atheists, they're rare. I have met some that do believe in objective morality, but say that it's kind of like one of these hidden things that we must discover. But once it's discovered, it's basically like this accepted universal truth that we all know. Like basically, like the term common sense in a way could also be considered this objective morality because it's just something we know by nature is right and wrong and such. I would agree, except I have a different perspective on that biblically.
Right. The
However,
grounding is different.
yeah, but then there's some that say are subjective moralists, and as a result, they can only say to them this is wrong. So you can just say, okay, that's wrong. But what if someone who is an atheist says, okay, this slavery is right. I should have the right to go capture some guy in the streets and then make it be my slave. There are people that will say that, that could say that, and they will, and they have done it before.
Right. Or a
What
female slave for the propagation of the species. That's the ultimate good in their worldview.
Yeah. So then the question should become, okay, if you are going to believe that, what is your standard if you think that's wrong? Because you say
Right.
there is no objective morality, it's subjective. You disagree with this guy who says that atheism or that slavery is okay. He's an atheist. You're both atheists. You're both subjective moralists. How do you solve this conundrum? Do you just go to the the current police or the current judge at that point?
Right. In
Well,
one
those
part
people
of
will
the
tell.
world.
Yeah. So what are their standards going to be? Because again, subjective moralists, if some of those may be it. So that way, they may have a different standard, and they may be on the other guy's case instead of your case, and also they have to get the jury. They're also
Right.
likewise fallible humans, and if they're subjective moralists, oh, then you're really gambling at that point because it's whatever evidence they think is going to conform with what they believe is right and wrong. So if you have
Uh-huh.
a balanced jury, then it may be a very nice gamble. If you have them all believing it's wrong, then good for you. But if you got them all thinking it's right, well, then guess what? The guy gets to go free and he gets to keep his slaves. So there's really no 100% sure foundation to get the determination that that is wrong. So they have to go to a standard. And if they're going to immediately reject, no, we can't think like what you just had presented about everything from the judge to the police. Well, if that's the case, congratulations. You're borrowing from the Christian worldview on morality. Right. You're borrowing the morality that God has stated in the Bible, that he has written in your hearts, that causes you to know that it is wrong. That is why you're able to say and know that it is wrong. The guy knows too, but he's in rebellion. He's hiding and suppressing the truth that he already knows is real. Well, that's the whole problem there, is that these people are just corrupt and wicked, and they'll do anything to defend their case. You are not that much wicked, since you're able to still call it out. But still, you can't just sit there and say it's subjective.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. And eventually then you turn their objection on their heads, and it turns out that their worldview is the one that's not consistent with the objective wrongness of slavery, not the Christian worldview, which one can interpret the historical context of those passages, instead of the atheist who, while in their rebellion against God, will pick these things out of context and then unjustifiably say that they're wrong. There's absolutely no consistency there.
Agreed. Next point I think we should probably bring up is the Bible in science. Christian anarchist CA said this earlier, and how we should address the claims of how the early Jewish people saw the world.
Mm-hmm.
In a sense, yeah.
Yeah, I've spoken about this a number of times as well. I think that I think that CA is very close to my view here. That in the ancient Near East context, the ancient Israelites would have not thought of things like the creation and the flood as we do now, as some sort of scientific events that can be measured in all these things. They would have been much more interested. While yes, these things literally happened, while I think the flood was probably local and the creation happened, they would not have thought of it in terms of material creation. Dr. John Walton is an Old Testament scholar who has specialized in this field of studying the ancient Near East culture, which was the culture that this story would have grown up in. And we need to think about, would the ancient Israelites really have been thinking, so let's think of the age of the universe here. No, I don't think so at all. And neither does he, because when they're bringing up the creation, it's similar to if someone brings up today the creation, tell me about your house. How did your home come to be your home? Now you could tell one story about how the foundations were laid, and then they got the boards to build the house, and then they did this, and then they laid down the concrete, and then one of the workers got sick, and then he went home, so then they brought in another guy, then they put the roof on, and then the shingles, and you could tell them all the exact details about the creation of your house. But no, when they're asking about, tell me about your home, they're more interested probably in how you came to where you were at. Talking about how you guys bought the house, and how you guys thought of all the things that it would be, and how you made the house your own, how you made it your home, not just a living space. And I think that's the overall point of the creation event. The flood is a bit different. I think there's a lot of prophetic symbolism there. Though I do think obviously that Noah existed and the flood happened. But yeah, I would definitely go with a very cultured approach to the topic. I think it's very important to note that their culture was a lot different from ours, and they weren't interested in science.
Yeah, and obviously at the time of the Bible being written, they didn't have the type of obviously not the type of technology that we have. They wouldn't have the same level of scientific discovery or knowledge that we have. So God obviously isn't going to change their whole view on the earth. He's going to relate it to them. And John Lennox definitely has a good point in his book 7 Days That Divide the World. Genesis is more poetry. Well, it is poetry. In my opinion, I think Genesis 1 is more poetry, and because like he points out the repetitions. Then God said, then he saw it was good, and all sorts of stuff like that.
I think it's important. I'm not sure I would put it in the genre of poetry because.
Well, yeah, I would agree with you. I probably worded that wrong. I meant it's more poetry than science, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, I think that we're talking more about functional creation. It's the story of how God came to how God made his people, and how the thing is that all these ancient creation myths talk about how the world was created through these wars between gods, and that they were throwing lightning bolts at each other and stuff, and then that's how everything was created. And this is just so fundamentally different from all of them, where creation isn't brought about through disorder, but through a God of order. And that God literally made these things out of nothing. And I think that in that sense, Genesis 1:1 is clearly supported by science, but I don't think that the text is a scientific narrative of literally everything that exactly went on, because I don't think those things can necessarily be reconciled with modern science. I mean, I have a number of young Earth creationist friends, Jason Lyle, Jonathan Sarfati being two PhD scientists who would hold to that view. But I think the point here is that if you want to hold to young Earth creation because of the science, or like being against evolution because of the science, hey, that's fine. But I don't think that you should use scripture to back up your position on origins.
Yeah. Also, how I see it. My computer just all right. Yeah. So how I see it, I'm quoting John Lennox and Michael Heiser a lot. But anyway, he has a great way of putting it. Science tells us what happened, and the Bible tells us why it happened. And if you view the Bible as a science book, I think it was R.C. Sproul that said it. If we see, it was either R.C. Sproul or C.S. Lewis that said it. If we view the Bible as a science textbook, we're in big trouble. And you just read it. It's definitely a history book. It tells us about kings. It gives us historical events.
Right. I think that painting everything with such broad brushes, like both the young Earth creationists and the new atheists will do, where it all has to be this, or it all has to be this fundamentalism of not caring about the historical context, and a blind belief that the Bible is either 100% completely accurate or it's 100% complete junk, is indefensible.
Yeah. Let me think. This kind of, I guess we can move on to the next thing because it kind of ties in to what we just talked about. It's the borrowing of stories from pagans and other ancient Jewish religions.
Yeah. Are you talking about Old Testament or New Testament?
Probably Old Testament, because I'm thinking of like the flood and all that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we can discuss a little bit because of Paul's letters and
right.
A little bit of that.
Yeah. I especially regarding like the creation myth, parallels there don't really bother me. Not that they don't matter, but I think that a little bit more leeway should be given there, especially with regards to Genesis 1, because I could definitely see what would be going on is some sort of contrast to the other myths. Like we are the opposite of that, so of course there would be a lot of similarities there. And the flood, I think that one just has to read the Epic of Gilgamesh and whatever other accounts they give to substantiate that claim. I think that if you read the different accounts that and you put them in their historical context, the similarities evaporate and the differences become so clear. So I think that and I guess the other thing there, where I really don't have an answer to this per se, that we have flood traditions and narratives from all over the world, from independent places that all talk about generally the same thing, about a man going on the boat with animals and them surviving a great flood. I think that there is definitely there's something there that I don't really sorry, I lost track.
You're fine.
Of what I was saying.
All right. 1 second.
I got a message about someone who wants to join here in a minute. So.
All right. Who is it? I mean, I'm fine with it. I'm just wondering.
Arcan. His name is Arcan.
All right. Yeah. He just I'll send him the link, or you got it?
I got it. I got it. I think he's in the group chat. So okay.
All right. So while you're doing that, I'll go ahead and share what I have. I haven't put that much research into it, but I've done enough to get a good understanding and kind of refute some objections to it. So first thing I want to discuss, if I have to recommend anything, it would probably a debate I saw between General Han Solo and Aaron Ra. Aaron Ra did a great job of describing what the last thing we just discussed, and he went into General Han Solo went into great detail on this. Yeah, and in regards to the flood, I'd have to say, just because there's a bunch of pagans that talk about a worldwide flood, I'd say that kind of gives it more credibility due to the fact that if there's more people writing about it, then that probably gives it more historical backing in a sense. Yeah, that's what I have to say about that. And I'm still kind of discovering and learning. I'm still haven't made up my mind if the flood was global or local. I'm leaning more towards the local side. I feel that fits best with the evidence, science, and the Bible itself. And in regards to the creation account, we have to, like you said, we should get a little more wiggle room for that, as we're not obviously the only religion that believes in God. So we definitely need some more room on that. And because obviously every religion probably believes that every religion believes God created the earth. So we should definitely get some more room in regards to that. So yeah, that's basically it for that.
Yeah, just give me a minute.
I have till 7:00, so take your time. I guess CA had to get to work, so I'm gonna go ahead and check my Twitter and see if Lewis has replied. Nope. All right. Well, Tim's doing that, I guess I'll just discuss the direction of where this hangout will be going. I think we're gonna touch on a few more things in regards to the reliability of the Bible. If it's a copy of other works, which we just kind of went into a little bit. And we most likely will bring up Islam, as that is a topic that me and Tim are fairly strong, and he's probably stronger than me in it, but I'd say I'm pretty good in regards to that. So I think we might bring up that. And he has another person joining who I'm not sure is what his specialties exactly are, but I bet knowing that he's a friend of Tim, I'm sure he's very bright. So yeah, while we wait for that. Yeah, so I guess while we're waiting on that, I'll expand a little bit on our last responses. Just because two sources talk about the same event doesn't exactly falsify it. It's much like the silence of one doesn't disprove what another person talking about said. So just for lack of better words. So it's sort of like this. So some people agree on the world, got how the world was made. I say Big Bang, God, obviously I'm a creationist. I'm not in detail as that's for next week, but next week I'm going to discuss the KCA, the Kalam cosmological argument, fine-tuning the Alvin Plantinga's argument and all that. So yeah, back on topic. We have different ways of most people have different views on how the world was made. So I would say I'd say beyond a reasonable doubt as
I'm back.
that. All right, welcome. All right, yeah, I was just all right. So is he going to join or?
It'll be a while.
All right, that's fine.
So what do you want to talk about next? I have a few things if you don't have anything, but I would like to.
No, I don't have anything. We could.
Okay. So I've been interacting a lot in the past month or so now, 3 weeks, with street epistemologists. Are you familiar with them?
No. I mean, I might be. I've just never heard that term.
Street epistemologists. So Peter Boghossian wrote a book. He is an atheist epistemologist, which is just the theory of knowledge, called A Manual for Creating Atheists, which is essentially a goal to get away from knowing things in a wrong way, that people should have more critical thinking skills and come to a better way of knowing things. So essentially, it is the way they do this is they go on the street and talk to people, and they ask something like, what do you believe in? Like, what is your worldview? Or do you want to talk about a deeply held belief?
Yeah, I've heard some of that. Yeah.
Okay. Give me about 10 seconds, and then I'll be right back.
All right. Yeah. So whoever is watching this, to the people watching, basically, it sounds just like a atheist type of street preaching. In case you didn't catch what Tim said, I'm guessing that's what I've got. That's what he said so far. He's still not done. So, yeah, just in case you didn't really catch that.
Okay, I'm back. I'm back. Okay, wonderful. So, essentially, he's teaching critical thinking skills. which I think on its own is a very good thing. So they'll ask, why do you believe? Okay, I think I can do this. So let's see if I can do this with you. I'll be the street epistemologist. You can be the Christian, and then we'll see where it goes. So,
right.
so do you have a deeply held belief that you'd like to discuss?
Yeah, I'm a Christian. I'm followed.
That's fantastic. Why are you a Christian as opposed to like a Muslim or a deist or an atheist? What makes you a Christian?
Should I put why I am, or put it kind of in
Just
layman
answer
terms?
honestly. Answer honestly.
All right. Well, I'd say because the evidence for as cosmology and physics goes, you can see God, how God has designed through that, the fine-tuning argument, the Kalam cosmological argument, and the predictive prophecy of the Bible and its reliability.
That's great. So let's just say you didn't have those reasons. Would you still be a Christian if you didn't have those reasons to believe? I'm not saying you don't have those reasons, but if I could give a response to all those that you would find adequate, would you still be a Christian?
Yes.
What grounds your belief then? So it's really not about the evidence. So why would you still be a Christian?
Well, for personal reasons, as I have seen how God has answered my prayers and the prayers of my family.
Okay, so answered prayer. So do you think that Allah answers prayers as well?
No, as I believe that the God of the Bible is the only true God.
Okay, so a Muslim would say a similar thing. Do you think that Muslims are justified in believing in Islam?
Well, no, as the fact that they're, well, this is actually pretty tough. I've never really.
See, this is their goal. This is their goal, to get you at the point where
basically just break it down. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So the main person who goes down on the streets and does this, there are a lot of them, just like street preachers.
Yeah.
But the main person is a guy named Anthony Magnabosco, and I've had a few conversations with him over social media, and he forwarded me one of his talks that he gave, and essentially what he said is, okay, so he had a bunch of blocks. He had a bunch of different colored blocks. So I'm gonna put my camera on so I can sort of demonstrate this in a second here.
All right.
I got a whiteboard, so that's a wonderful thing. Okay, so I'm gonna have to erase this from my whiteboard, but okay.
I'm gonna present it. Put you on present everyone.
Okay. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna try and get this on the whiteboard just so everybody can see it all right. Okay, I'm gonna have to move this more. Okay, I've got Bayes' theorem up there, but okay. I'm gonna have to erase this now, and I'm just gonna make a spot here in the middle. Oh, this is really hard to erase. Well, I'm gonna spare you, and you don't have to watch me erase. So, man, this has only been on here a couple of days. What the heck? I'll be right back. You entertain everybody for like 35 seconds.
All right, take your time.
Grab a cloth to wipe it. So, yeah, I guess you could. I guess I'm gonna listen back anyway. So, how about you let them know what you thought of the street
Yeah,
preaching?
all right. All right. Well, guys, that was, not gonna lie, that was pretty challenging. I feel like there could be answers I just was not able to answer because I've never heard of that. I'm sure I know Tim will give a great reply to how to deal with that. Um, but if any of you are to hear that, use faith as they are not disproving anything. Yeah, that's what I have to say about this so far. I'm definitely going to be looking into this after later on today, in days in the future. But honestly, it sounds a lot like what the new atheists like to use, as they kind of say the same thing. Well, why isn't, I'm not saying it's the same thing, but it's the same thing in a way, like, well, how do you know the Muslim's not right? How do you know that the Hindu's not right? It's kind of like that. But yeah, so uh that's basically all I have to say about that, as I'm for the most part not I'm definitely not exact knowledgeable on that. But I guess while we're waiting on Tim, I'll talk about the Bible study. Definitely going really off topic here, but I feel like it's a good thing to talk about a little bit. Definitely have like a way to highlight, with have your color code. See, for me, I have pink is God's love. How we should act, and God's promises. My yellow is apologetics, prophecy, and God's covenants. Green would be like my favorite verses that help me get through situations. Obedience, spiritual growth, salvation. How God helps in Jesus' parables. Blue be friendship, peace, hope, prayer, and fasting, and friendships/relationships. Orange would be prophets, prayer, apostles, kings, disciples, and wisdom. And purple is sin, temptation, and foolishness. And, uh, Spurgeon had a great way of saying a Bible that's falling apart usually belongs to a person that's not. I definitely would agree. My Bible was very marked up, and you could use that color code plan if you would like. I think it's a great one. Yeah, there's other ones on the internet that kind of helped me with this. But yeah.
I didn't know that it took that long to wipe that. Oh,
You're
jeez.
fine. You're fine.
Yeah. Oh man, that was hard to wipe off. Okay. Let's see if it shows good now. Right.
Oh yeah, that's better.
Oh, that is fantastic.
That's perfect.
So, okay, trying to put it at the bottom here. So, this is pretty much what their goal is. So, at the bottom here, you got this block, which is the person. We need to be very concerned about the person. And this next block is going to be their belief. And this belief is very foundational to this person. This belief is very strongly held, and this is important to the person. So we need to be really sensitive towards that. And then what they're going, what Anthony said was, then they're going to give a reason why they have this belief. And that's this block right here. So they see evidence and reasons as distractions because in their experience, when they talk about evidence with people, then what ends up happening is instead of getting down to the person and their foundational belief, they see the person presents a piece of evidence, they present a piece of counter evidence, and then the Christian puts another piece of evidence out there, and then it just keeps going and going and going. So I guess you didn't see all those boxes, but I made boxes all the way to the top. Wait, nope. Okay, I think that is okay.
There we go. Yeah,
you know what I meant. Okay. So instead of that, now eraser. What they don't want that. They want you to recognize that instead of this block right here, which would be the evidence, and the first piece of evidence that you present and the strongest piece of evidence, they usually ask something like, what is your best reason for believing Christianity is true? And instead of this evidence, once you get down to the foundational belief and the person, what they get, what it really comes down to usually is something like faith. And I'm going to mark this as faith. This isn't a block. This is a defense. Eventually, when they get down to, well, would you still be a Christian without all the evidence? Like yourself, you said yes. And it comes down to personal experience and sometimes faith. Well, you sometimes personal experience and usually faith. So they want to remove all these obstacles, which are the evidence, and instead realize that the person is placing more emphasis on faith, and that's the real reason that they believe. So their thing is that they don't want to talk about the evidence. They want to talk about how someone knows something. And then they get down to, well, is faith a reliable way of knowing things? Is faith something that is a virtue? Is faith a good thing? And in his book, Boghossian defines faith always in one of two ways: either pretending to know something you don't know, or belief without evidence. So now, this reminds me of presuppositionalism. So essentially, we have presuppositional atheism, where they're supposing Christianity is false and that faith is a bad thing, and that faith means something that it actually doesn't mean, and then arguing away Christianity based on that. So then they can erase this deeply held belief and bring someone to a better epistemology based on evidence and fact.
Yeah. So in a way, it kind of sounds like they're just saying, well, forget the evidence.
Yes, they don't like, Boghossian has said openly many times, don't talk about the evidence. Because the evidence is not important. We don't need to think about the evidence. We need to think about the way someone comes to know things.
Yeah, that sounds just like the atheist version of Jehovah's Witnesses.
And generally, they like to deal more with lay Christians than actual apologists and scholars, because, well, whenever a scholar would be confronted with these questions, like if, I mean, I'm not a scholar, but if I was confronted with these questions, and usually they come around to saying something like, well, if there weren't any reasons for belief in Christianity, which would be, this is me, and then this is Christianity, and you didn't have something like, I would give the resurrection of Jesus. If we didn't have the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus, would you still be a Christian? And what they want, and I guess what they expect, is for me to replace this evidence with faith. But my position is that I'm a critical thinker, and that there's no other way that I could come to know Christianity is true. So if there was no evidence for the resurrection, which is the foundation of Christianity, as Paul said, then my belief in Christianity would also pretty much cease to exist. Because faith is trust. The faith is actually defined as trust based on prior performance. And if I don't have that prior performance, which would be something like the evidence, I wouldn't believe something. So faith is coupled with the evidence, not a substitute for the evidence in my from my position. So I
Yeah,
think that we really need to be emphasizing how central something like the resurrection is to Christian belief, aside from the anti-intellectualism that we do see in the church today. So that's really the summary of street epistemology. It is they ask questions, and then eventually they get down to someone's deeply held belief is actually usually something like, well, I had an experience that I can't explain on any other way. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that religious experience, that you can put that in an argumentative form, and I would just say that that's another kind of evidence. That's not something that is apart from the evidence.
yeah, that's what I kind of meant by I meant by personal experience.
Right. I would view that as some type of evidence, as I think that a number of good philosophers have done. So what I've tried to ask them is that, okay, so we finally get down to me and, okay, everybody can see this, and my belief in Christianity. So now that I say that it's based on this evidence for the resurrection, can we get beyond street epistemology? Can we actually start talking about the evidence? Because if your goal is to put me in a better way of thinking and critical thinking, and if you establish that as a Christian, I am still a critical thinker and have a good way of knowing things, which is by reasons and evidence, can we now get beyond the look at myself and my belief and just start talking about the evidence? So yeah, that's my take on street epistemology. What do you think of it overall?
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. What it seems like to me is they're just trying to say, well,
Oh man,
like I
PA
said,
is back. I'm gonna have to do the whole thing over again.
no, I can explain it to him.
No, you're good, man.
But how I see it, they're literally saying, forget the evidence, and they're redefining faith for in terms they're basically redefining the Christian definition of faith. And I think against someone like you said, a lay Christian, that would probably crush their faith, honestly. So against, it's not if they brought that in against, say, for like William Lane Craig, that just wouldn't last. But I think if Christians could like know how to figure out how to answer things like that, then that could probably.
Yeah, I think that this street epistemology is really growing, and I think that it can't be ignored anymore, and it's really bringing to a front the anti-intellectualism in the church.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that it's an important thing to at least know about.
Yeah. I actually heard about the whole street epistemology thing from a couple friends of mine. Like, what's his name? Pine Creek or something. Is the
Oh
YouTube.
yeah, Doug L. Yeah, I was talking to him the other day.
Yeah, a couple people that were very rational, intelligent people such as Richard Bushy, General Han Solo, and a couple others had talked to him, and the thing was on their live stream. later I find out, any time where these type of people were involved, those videos were deleted by Pine Creek.
Oh, I believe it.
And what General and another individual named Holy Spackle once told me, that it started to become a cultic-like thing. Like there's a Skype kind of thing where people are like, basically, it's like a whole like Jesus seminar kind of thing where it's basically a bunch of people gathered together and they're teaching street epistemology. So they're trying to go over it, but they won't allow Christians in. As soon as the Christians come in, either they kick them out or they all leave at the same time, because that's like a code that they have.
Yeah, I think I oh, somebody else is joining. It looks like. Well, I'll just finish what I was going to say to you about Doug. So recently, he has gone beyond talking to lay Christians and decided to essentially infiltrate Jonathan McClatchy, who is an apologist, his Apologetics Academy, which is a webinar that is run every week where they bring on a scholar to talk about something about the relevance of Christianity. They bring on Christian scholars, non-Christian scholars. They let them present for an hour on their topic on a range of
Yeah,
theological.
I think John's trying to talk to us, but he's muted at the moment. Okay.
Oh, he's out.
Yeah, he was static. So
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
Try to get back in. But anyway, so basically, Doug went on to the Apologetics Academy when Lydia McGrew was on, who is a blogger and philosopher, who is the wife of Tim McGrew, who is an apologist. And he basically tried this whole bit on her, and then they brought in Tim, and then he tried it on him. And I mean, it fell flat on its face with people who actually know what they're talking about, and actually know the evidence well. And then he tried it last week with Jonathan himself, and once again, he really showed that he has absolutely no understanding of Christian doctrine or anything. And his questions about motives and, well, why do you really believe this? It seems very superficial, at least to me. Their interest on motives over actual facts really distinguish them from the academic community. Because if two scholars were to disagree on something, I mean, you don't start saying, well, why do you really believe that? I mean, they just look at the facts, and then the interpretations of the facts speak for themselves. You don't have to go around analyzing and saying, hey, you're not a critical thinker because you don't agree with us. Yeah. Peter Boghossian himself, who is the creator of this street epistemology thing, has said that theists and especially Christians don't deserve a spot at the adult table because of their beliefs. So yeah, I definitely would agree with the whole cult mentality thing.
So I guess Francis Collins, the guy that took 10 years to develop and map out the human genome and with every little sequence and managed to name out all the codes, I guess he doesn't deserve a spot at that, big
critical
boy
thinker table, right?
The critical thinker table, the kind that gave him, I think, a Nobel Prize and a bunch of other scientific awards specifically for that discovery. In regards to science, without him, you wouldn't be able to have done that, sir. So
and
it's sad.
Yeah, it really is. And is he really prepared to say that all these professional philosophers, all these scientists, all these professional historians who are among the greatest thinkers of our time, can he really say that no, these are not critical thinkers?
And who are you saying is saying this?
That Boghossian is saying that we can't say that these people are critical thinkers because of faith.
Wait? So Boghossian?
Peter Boghossian is the guy who wrote the book about street epistemology. He's like the main.
When was this book?
2014, I think.
2014. Yeah, man. Yeah, that's definitely gonna have a shot if you're gonna consider all these other philosophers and
Yeah.
like I said about Francis Collins and these other scientists that have made discoveries over the years. I mean, are we just going to then disqualify them from the academic field? Are we just going to give up their PhDs? What if these people could find more things that win them the Nobel Prize for discoveries and such? What?
Right. Right.
When you have people that are able to think, and they're the ones that provide and get this information out there, maybe they're on the brink of discovering something that if you were to fire him or to get rid of his academic credentials or not to give him an opportunity to speak up because of his faith and such, according to street epistemology, then you're basically going to make it years later till something new gets discovered, which actually is ironic because in an episode of Family Guy, it takes them, there's a universe or something where they're in like the future is like, this is Quahog, the same time, same year, except Christianity didn't exist, and therefore the advancement of science was developed a little faster. You're basically going to do the same kind of thing that's the whole fear of being made there, when people who have been scientists have made these academic discoveries, and you're not going to simply just say, okay, silence about the faith. You want to actually like get rid of an open opportunity for them to be at the table, because simply they are people who just believe this religious stuff, even if it's just in the silence. You just need to silence them because simply that they are Christians.
Right.
It makes no sense.
At times he goes as far to say something that at times it sounds like he's talking about a mental patient. Like he talks about these street epistemology encounters as interventions. So it really is borderline. Like he's talking about someone with a mental illness. And when you start talking about that someone with a certain worldview has a mental illness, I think at that point you're really treading into dangerous, dangerous territory.
Mm-hmm. And it's would you consider Aaron Ra part of the street epistemology thing? I'm not sure if he is or not.
Yes. He actually did a video pretty recently with one of the main guys of street epistemology. The guy is Anthony Magnabosco. He's got a channel where he puts all his street epistemology encounters. And basically, the street epistemologists have talked to Aaron and said, "Aaron, you're too hardcore, and you're not nice enough. So we want you to get into this street epistemology where you can talk to everyday people." So I found that rather funny. But yeah, Aaron Ra is definitely one of these sort of people.
Yeah, because I found the guy I mentioned, General Han Solo, he actually recently did a debate with him.
He debated Aaron Ra?
Yeah, it was on
cool.
It's on the Great Debate Community channel, and
Yeah.
I think he even posted it on his channel too. Was where he basically had like the debate was on biblical history and such. So it occasionally got off topic to discussing the supernatural kind of aspect, but he's just simply talking about like, does the events we see in the Bible conform with history? And for a good bit they talk about the flood and the Exodus, and Aaron would occasionally just keep bringing it back to God at times instead of dealing with the topic of just being about the history and such, where he kept being in the camp, which is in the majority too, by the way. The majority saying that there was no Exodus,
right?
But then Solo mentioned something about a paper or something, or not necessarily a paper itself, but a conference that was gathered in, I forget what year, but it was a gathering of Christian, I think Jewish as well as atheist historians and scholars that gathered together to look at this new evidence that had been presented. And every single scholar there, even the atheists, came to the consensus of the Exodus happening. And there were papers that were written, there were basically transcripts, as well as the fact that there were 24 hours worth of footage that was recorded for the conference. And
wow.
So I don't know if you can find the
I'll have to
transcripts for
look into that. Yeah.
But General himself decided to post all 24 hours of the conference because he just loves long videos. So it's all
That would be
24.
long.
Yeah, every single 24 hours of the conference is there with every single scholar, representative, historian examining and going over the evidence for the thing. And he told Orange, like, if you haven't heard about this or haven't seen this, just do me a favor. When you get a chance, look over this or examine this. I'll send it to you when I can, and just whenever you have time on your hands. And that was, of course, a couple times where he said, I've got a lot of time on my hands. I got to be making videos. I go around doing lectures and such. I don't have time to watch 8-hour videos and look at these kinds of things. But he, just said, whenever you have time, just look at some of the stuff in this. So hopefully he takes the advice and later looks into it. But I mean, we have the evidence of the things that we believe, and we're presenting them to people. Whether they choose to believe or not is another story. I mean, like for their example, there was a guy I was debating on, or well, haven't officially debated, but we've had arguments about Josephus. Like, did Jesus exist? Well, we have the writing of Josephus to account for that in the Testimonium Flavium.
Right.
The typical thing is, it's a forgery.
Well, that's not the majority view.
Yeah, don't most scholars agree that that's a reliable text?
Yes, and in a sense, there was a study there was a survey that was done by one of the leading scholars of Josephus, and what he did was he took every single Josephus scholar in his field and did a survey of about an estimate of how many scholars believe it's that. You have like about 3 or 4 that say that the entire text is authentic. You have 13 of the scholars that believe that the text is entirely not authentic. But then you have some that, like, I think around 7 or 8 that believe it's less partial.
Right.
Only little bits and pieces are interpolated. But then you have like around 15. Sorry about that. My worker's trying to be an idiot because he knows if he says my name, then things are just going to happen. Yeah, so where was I? Oh, yeah. So, like, a majority believe that only part of it was interpolated.
Right. There's an Arabic manuscript of antiquities that supports that as well. Basically, when you take out the Christian glosses of, like, Jesus was
the Christ.
Right. And then something about the resurrection. Other than that, it seems to flow perfectly with Josephine style.
Yeah, and that's the next thing, because that's the next objection they'll say is like, well, in the context of the paragraph it's in, it makes no sense considering the paragraph before and after it. It says it ruins the style, though, and I'm sure Tim knows what I'm talking about here. Is that the part that's used is the part that's going to be used is basically like, back then they didn't have anything of footnotes or appendixes. They didn't have these things. And what ancient historians did was that they wrote their footnotes, their expositions, and their little appendixes in the story itself, in the thing they would write offwards. So that's what historians and scholars, like even Bart Ehrman, make note of this. And in fact, I forget, there was a lady Josephus scholar who herself makes note that this was actually one of Josephus's trademarks. This was definitely one thing that made Josephus a unique historian, is that he did that. And in fact, in the Antiquities of the Jews, he was able to do just that. The Antiquities of the Jews, he would leave these certain different citations and footnote or pre-citation footnotes and such elsewhere within the text, and then he'd go back on to the point of which he was arguing.
I think that and I think what also really points towards the authenticity of at least part of the testimonium is that this isn't the only reference to Jesus in the antiquities. We've of course got the James reference, which other than mythicists, I don't know of any professional Josephine scholar who would say that it's an interpolation or anything like that. So the fact that we already have Jesus mentioned in another place in reference to Jesus being the brother of James, I think that the burden of proof has to be on them that the entire thing is an interpolation, especially when you have someone like when you've got something like two references to the same individual in the same book. So yeah, I think that the burden of proof has to be on the skeptic there, and they haven't really been able to fulfill that. I read Richard Carrier's book on the non-existence of Jesus, his big book on the topic, and his interaction with the Josephine scholarship is just dismissive. It's ridiculing. It's nowhere near the level of scholarly work that would need to be done to undo the work that has been done on this passage. There have been so many different ways to show, whether it be from the manuscript evidence or the literary techniques that were used, or looking at it through Josephus's writing style. There have been so many ways to show that this is definitely, at least partially, authentic. So I think that the mythicists have not been able to undo the arguments for it.
Yeah, and even if Josephus's works were to be interpolations, we still have 41 other references that skeptics would have to explain.
Well, right. I guess some of those would be Gnostic sources, but the fact remains that the evidence for the historical Jesus outside of Josephus, I mean, then you can go to Tacitus. Tacitus, I think, is a very reliable source. And if you didn't have that, you have the entire New Testament, which is by far the best evidence. We have evidence that goes back to within a few years of the events of the crucifixion. So
Yeah. But
mysticism is such a bankrupt position.
Yeah, but even after presenting that to the guy that I mentioned, all this information and what you just displayed, Timothy, is that his response was, okay, that still doesn't defeat the fact that there are some scholars that think it's not entirely authentic. So it's pretty much just going back to the minority. He just simply says, well, that doesn't change the fact
I could
that
say that there are a minority of geophysicists who are flat earthers. I mean, appealing to the minority of scholarship is the stupidest thing.
Yeah, I mean,
and I'd say it's pretty dishonest.
Look at the minority. If we're gonna go with that round, then minority of PhD young Earth creationists. Will they say, well, because we have these guys, let's go to them then? That's by atheist logic. At that point, by mythicist logic. Oh, what about the all these different kinds of minorities at this point? Let's do that for any kind of truth. Let's go to minority religion, because I'm sure there's a religion out there that can be true. But it's just got to be the minority. It's even smaller than the atheist.
Right. So unfalsifiable as well. Yeah, I think that the young Earth creation example is a really good one, because, I mean, there are far more scientists who are young Earth creationists than historians who are mythicists. It's that much of a minority position. Other than Richard Carrier and Robert Price, who neither of them teach, because no one will hire such hacks. There's no other way to say it. They're not teaching scholars, so there are no teaching scholars on the planet who are mythicists, while there are teaching scientists who are young Earth creationists. And I don't see much sympathism for young Earth creation in atheist circles.
Yeah, and that's interesting too, because I remember, because one thing that a friend of mine mentions is that Richard Carrier actually had recently just released a book, and this book, from what he says to me, is supposedly going to be the first ever book that he's written that's actually peer reviewed.
Mm-hmm. That'd be on the historicity of Jesus. And what I've read on the peer reviewing process there is that it is a minor publishing press. It is it is the University of Sheffield Press in England. It's a university press, so it is peer reviewed, but it is a minority press. Richard got to see who would be peer reviewing it before it was peer reviewed. So this whole thing about it being peer reviewed is questionable at best. I mean, what kind of people are going to be peer reviewing it? That's the real question there.
Yeah, I mean that should be another thing to consider. But I mean, even then, that's like that makes you think. First time ever in a long while that he's actually gone through peer review.
Right. I mean, he got his. I think it's been about 10 years now since he's got his doctorate, and he has a handful of peer-reviewed publications in any scholarly journals.
Mm-hmm.
And all of them are relating to mythicism, which is not even his field of study. Other than his dissertation, I don't think he's written anything peer-reviewed. But yeah, I mean, if that's their hero, then I think we're fine.
Yeah, and I'd say for the most part, a lot of the Jesus mythicists, besides Robert Price, don't even have the qualifications to even really on whether if Jesus existed or not.
Right. Carrier actually goes the route of talking about the Pauline epistles and how they give evidence for mythicism. And he's not a Pauline scholar. He's not a Pauline exegete. He has no qualifications in New Testament scholarship. His field is ancient Greco-Roman science. So yeah, I don't see there ever being a sizable group of historians that would hold to mythicism. It's such a position that can't be taken seriously by the few scholars that have taken it on. It's gotten very, very little support from people other than atheist activists. That, fortunately, I think that New Testament scholarship is going to be without mythicism. And it was tried a couple hundred years ago. It failed then. It was tried 100 years ago. It failed then again. And now it's being tried now. And it'll fail again. I mean, that's how these fringe movements work.
Well, hang on, hold on. I gotta say one thing because I just found this out. Well, he's not teaching at a university. Here's apparently from his About blog. It says he is currently working on several projects, but also teaching affordable online courses in secular philosophy, history, and methodology at the Secular Academy. Is where he's doing this.
Oh man. Teaching at the Secular Academy. Oh man.
Online institute.
So by his logic, anyone who's ever we could call Jesus overall. We could call this right now we could call this some sort of academy, and then we'd all be teachers at.
Yeah,
we can define ourselves into the academic realm because we call ourselves an academy. That's
exactly.
From perpetually unemployed blogger to Secular Academy teacher.
We just need to get our PhDs and such, and doesn't matter what interesting it is. Right. We could just get it online. We could maybe just include.
We could be Kent Hovind. We could be Kent Hovind. I bet Patreon.
Yeah, that'll work. People will buy it.
Yeah.
We could literally go on Weebly, make our own website, and boom, we have our own school.
We could. You know,
even if we don't have any credentials.
That's actually one thing. I mean, I've been trying hard to do this one thing. It's not actually you don't get no degree or any of this kind of stuff. But I have been trying to do something that I've thought about is interesting in regards to education, and I think can actually help out in regards to apologetics and Bible study and all that stuff. Is this whole, and I actually mentioned this in a book that I'm currently in the process of getting grammar checked, and hopefully this free ebook will be released for the public to have access to desire if they wish to desire to have the book. And that is this whole student and rabbi kind of thing. It's kind of like the Socrates and the Plato and Aristotle kind of thing. You have the teacher and you have
awesome.
the student kind of thing. Where
Yeah.
basically what you have is, you have a class. Teacher has to be very general, very vague when dealing with it, so you don't get as much information to acquire within that span of time. You have to just get what you are working with. But if you have someone who's knowledgeable on something, what you can do and in the end is just go to somebody like the students back then did with the rabbis, and they would ask them questions, or like the philosophers did. They personally had a one-on-one thing. They had one teacher and would help them out and converse, and they'd get to ask them questions to clarify on more things. And that was like their main teacher until they felt like they were grown and mature and were ready to go out and explore and be involved in these certain things. I got started on that with a guy that I knew, and he was my rabbi for that matter. And later, and then I eventually grown up and to the point where now I'm actually being a bit of a rabbi to a couple other people at the moment. But this method, I think, can help out, especially if you know some people that really are wanting to know how to refute these sorts of things. So things like emails and email contact exchange, or things like what we're doing here on a Hangouts or a Skype, can really help out if people are willing and wanting to learn. I've been doing this for a couple of people. A friend of mine is doing studies in inductive Bible study method and the Greek examining of the Greek text. So he trains out with them. So we've been doing that for quite some time, and it's basically just the old way of like how the philosopher thing goes. And I think that's a better way of getting the education out to the people, especially in terms of Christian apologetics, compared to the traditional school method teaching, where you have a bunch of people and the teacher just being very vague and you don't get as much information.
That's a really great idea.
I like that. All right. Well, Darth Dawkins has joined us.
Oi. Is my mic working?
Hello. Yeah, it's working. We hear you.
Okay. I'm so used to using press to talk on Discord. Let me change my icon. Let's see. So, have you had any atheists come in the room?
One came in earlier. CA, do you know if that was? Oh, let me see. Yeah, I think that might be Tim's friend. Let me pull his name up. See if you're familiar with him. Jean Timakis, Thimakis.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Do you know about sniping?
No.
Okay. If you give out the link, malicious people can enter into the room and take the whole room down.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm new to the whole Hangouts thing, so.
Yeah. So if you want to prevent people from sniping, you have to be judicious in giving out the link.
All right. Yeah. Thank you for that. I'm like I said, I'm new to all this. I appreciate that.
Yeah, the reason why I came in with no icon, I had to create a new one because, what's his face has all my accounts blocked. Who just left?
Oh, Anarchist.
Yeah, Anarchist. Yeah. Let's see. All right, let's get my icon.
I'm back. What did I miss?
Oh, nothing. It was just Darth.
All right. I'm going to reload the room, see if my icon comes up.
Oh, CA left?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not coming up yet. I wonder why. It should come up in a minute. Do you know about Discord?
Tim, you familiar
Hello?
with that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So where were we? Jesus overall.
We just finished up talking about Richard Carrier.
Oh yeah,
and
we were
his,
talking about, we were
his
talking
secular
about, yeah, Academy.
online.
Have you ever heard of the slogan, "A man's morality will dictate his theology"?
No, the man's. Oh, you're right.
A man's morality will dictate
Right.
his theology.
Right.
Well, Richard Carrier has admitted that he's polyamorous, which
Right.
is just a cliche for somebody who's a fornicator.
Right, multiple partners, just disgusting in every possible way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't see how he could criticize the Bible when
And
his
the funny thing is, he's talked often about stuff like slavery in the Old Testament and a number of other things related to supposed immorality in the Bible. But then he goes into such a ancient adulterous practice.
exactly very hypocritical.
And then his scholarship isn't any better. So
Yeah. Like I think see I would actually listen to a historian on whether if Jesus existed or not rather than someone who has a degree in studying Greco-Roman science.
yeah, it's I mean, Carrier, the thing about him is that in his field he's fine, but once he gets out of his field, he's well beyond the consensus of New Testament scholarship, obviously. And just as an overall aesthetic, I'd much rather listen to someone like Robert Price, who is generally respectful, who is generally not going to be as condescending as Richard Carrier when dealing with these issues. And he's
You think Price is not condescending?
I don't think Price is as condescending as Carrier from what I've seen.
Oh, okay.
I mean, condescending as I think that Carrier is so extreme, and everyone who has ever disagreed with him on his blog is either they're too stupid to understand, or they must be a liar because they disagree with him. I think that Carrier is well beyond adult-like behavior, and at least Price will behave himself.
Maybe it's because he's older,
Yeah, yeah.
And I would say Price is definitely a lot more respectful to.
I mean, I think that both of their scholarship is equally bad, obviously. But I mean, that's
well. It's funny. It's funny. The atheists are always appealing to consensus, especially for Darwinism.
right.
But then when it comes to modern historical scholarship, Price's and Carrier's views are rejected.
Exactly. The only two scholars on the planet who would assert their thesis
Right.
beyond
Even Bart Ehrman, who is a very harsh and I would say even dishonest critic of the New Testament, even he balks at their
right.
historical attacks upon the New Testament.
Yeah, I mean, Did Jesus Exist by Bart Ehrman would be the first book I'd give to anyone on the topic of Jesus mythicism, even above works by more conservative scholars, because Ehrman thinks like a liberal would and comes to such different conclusions because, I mean, the myths are in left field.
You should see the video that Tim McGrew does on Bart Ehrman, dealing with,
yeah, I know.
oh my gosh, of how dishonest Bart Ehrman is with a number of the texts that he criticized in the New Testament. It'll knock your socks off that a man of his stature and academic achievement could not have written and said the things that he did out of ignorance.
The one thing that really has gotten me with Ehrman, at least with some of his recent books, is that he, at least when he talked about things like the text of the New Testament, just about textual criticism and the manuscripts, he would at least talk about people like Metzger and Wallace, experts that disagreed with him. But in his more recent books, like on the burial of Jesus and how Jesus became God, he doesn't even reference the expert in ancient Jewish burial, Jody Magnus, who works right next door to him at his office in Chapel Hill. So there's definitely some dishonesty there with regards to how he picks who's the expert, and his handling of biblical scholarship in general. I think he's definitely gotten worse over the years.
I guess there's a lot of polyamorous atheist chicks to pursue.
Must be.
Hey, you go to all those skeptic meetings, and you have all of these
right
skeptic chicks drooling at his feet.
I mean, Carrier is being investigated for. Carrier was banned from Skepticon this past year because he was investigated for sexual harassment charges, which doesn't surprise me as a polyamorous individual that he would be.
Well, you know what? As much as I dislike Richard Carrier, which is an understatement, unless there's more than just allegations to go on, we should always, even if someone's our enemy, we should remember that it's an accusation. Now, if there's something that will tip the scales,
well, right. You know, they didn't find anything, so it's highly unlikely.
Then what you have to just say, it's an accusation, and sometimes accusations are true, sometimes they're lies.
Right. It was enough for him to get banned from this skeptical gathering, but not enough to put criminal charges or anything against him. So I would agree that we definitely shouldn't be saying that he definitely was engaging in sexual harassment, or that he probably was, because that's such a serious charge that you can't just.
Well, wait a minute. In all fairness, if you're going to say he probably was, then you have to have some stuff that tips the scales.
I was saying he probably was not.
Say that again?
He probably was not.
Okay. All right. I misheard you. My apology. Yeah, I debate a lot of atheists over on Discord, and occasionally I'll have a hangout.
Darth, you're not an atheist?
No, I'm a fundamentalist Christian.
Oh, okay. I was
No, Darth Dawkins is a parody on Richard Dawkins.
All right.
Have you ever dealt with street epistemologists? We were talking about that earlier.
Oh yeah, or Peter Boghossian.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're fundamentally dishonest.
They have just in the past couple weeks, I have really acquainted myself with them, and people like Anthony Magnabosco have been reaching out to me for my quote-unquote intervention.
Oh yeah. Magnabosco is a disciple of Peter Boghossian.
Yeah.
Check out Tim McGrew's video on street epistemology. I think you'll find it fascinating.
I did see him interact with on the Apologetics Academy, which is Jonathan McClatchy's apologetics webinar. In the past couple weeks, he interacted with not Magnabosco, but I think his YouTube channel name is Pine Creek.
Hey, listen, you sound very, very well informed. I'd like to. Are you on Discord at all?
I don't have I don't have an account, but I could make one.
Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to post a link.
Okay.
And what you want to do is I would download the app because the app has more capabilities than doing it. And then what you do is in the left-hand side, you click on the plus sign and it'll ask you to go to a server, and then you paste the link and it will bring you right into the server.
Cool.
And then you're set to go. And then we can give you other references because I think you'll really enjoy. If you enjoy Google Hangouts, you'll enjoy Discord. And Discord is depending on the server you go into, it can't be sniped.
That's good. That's good.
But it's just another platform. And another thing is this: if you want to invite the public to future Hangout discussions, you can do it through Discord, and then you can stream it to YouTube, and it cannot be sniped. Because if you hold a Hangout like this, all somebody has to do is if they get the link, is to go into the external chat, and they can remove anybody in the room, including you.
Wow, I've heard about that. I haven't experienced that, but that's definitely something to watch out for.
A number of atheists will target the room for sniping. So all you have to do once you get onto a Discord, are you on Mac or Windows?
Windows.
Okay, so after you get that, and if you want to do Hangouts like this, all you have to do is get a program called OBS. It's free. And OBS will allow you to stream the Discord chat rooms to YouTube just like you're streaming now. And you can have 99 people in the room if you want.
Nice.
And but you have to get the settings right for OBS. I can help you with that. And that way your Hangouts and your conversations, you can invite the public, give them the Discord link. They will just join the Discord room, and then you can stream. I occasionally hold Hangouts for debates with atheists on Discord, streaming it. So let me get the link.
I'm looking into that. Yeah.
All right.
Let me get the link.
Cool.
Dawkins, since you are Christian, I was wondering, what do you debate atheists from in defense of the Bible, like the Bible's history, or do you debate them from like as scientific evidence for God? Which approach do you usually take?
I debate them presuppositionally, not evidentially. I think evidential position is fine, but it has to be standing on a biblical presupposition.
Yeah.
Okay. And evidentialism arguments can be extremely, extremely powerful, but a deeply committed atheist can just simply say, okay, you've convinced me Jesus rose again from the dead. But that doesn't show that the Christian God exists.
Right. I think it's important to say in like when you're presenting an actual argument that you're not putting them in like the judge's seat as like they're judging God, that you have to present it within a Christian worldview. Oh, there's a link. Good.
Okay, but before you click it though, download the Discord app, then launch the Discord.
Okay. Download. I see. Okay.
Yeah, download the Discord app. Then you just have to register. All right.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Then you need to pick a screen name, just like Google Plus, and then after you register, on the left-hand side of the window will be a plus sign. You click on the plus sign, and it will say create server, join server. So you click on join server, and then you paste that link, and then you'll be brought into what is called the server. And whoever owns the server, you can have one or more audio chat rooms, and you can have multiple text rooms too on different topics.
Awesome. Okay, well, it's downloading now, so.
Yeah, and Discord is pretty nice. It's really good. Yeah. The only reason why I haven't been holding the Hangouts on Google Hangouts is because we would get sniped all the time by cyber stalking atheists.
I came from Pal Talk for the past couple weeks, and I'm just so
I did too. That's where I originally came from.
But that has just gone down to such a it's a hellhole. It really is.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and by the way, the atheists are the same in many in Discord too.
Well, I mean,
But,
yeah, you have to expect that on a public server like that.
But I have a Discord server that there's chat sessions in. We invite atheists a couple times a week.
Nice.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, Google Hangouts is fine is if you can confine the link with people you trust. But if you want to get anyone public, and the weird thing is this is deliberate on the part of Google. It's not a bug.
Why? I wonder why they would do that beyond some sort of conspiracy.
Well, you know how left wing and politically correct they are.
Yeah.
Maybe they leave. Well, the point is maybe they just leave it for a back door for people who feel disgruntled to take down the room. But it makes no sense.
Right. How easily that can be abused is.
Right. So this way, okay, once you get up and running with Discord, in a couple of days.
Yeah.
Right. When you're in a couple of days, when you have some time, if you show up on Discord, I can go through, help you how to do it. Once you get OBS and you plug in a couple of settings, but then you're good to go. Then all you have to do is you go into you start Discord, you go into your room, and then you launch OBS and you click stream, and it will stream right to your YouTube channel.
Awesome. Yeah, the download for Discord is almost done, and then I'll do the register.
And then all you have to do is post the Discord link in the YouTube window for viewers, and then when they click on it, they'll either go to Discord through the browser or they'll go through the app. Yeah, and so far, what I've heard is Discord is snipe proof.
That's good.
And there's all sorts of servers. There's one server called Krillism, which is just a cesspool of miscreant atheists. I have my server is called Debate Religion, and the chat room in it is called Atheist Jeopardy.
Atheist Jeopardy.
Yeah, there's another server that I go into. It's called Philosophy, but it's more political talk.
Right.
And some of the room admins are they're Roman Catholic, but they're very sympathetic to my apologetic against atheists.
Mm-hmm. I see. I'm in Discord now. I just finished registering.
Okay, if you participate in our rooms, you'll really benefit very quickly.
Awesome.
Iron sharpens iron. You're gonna hear a lot of the objections that atheists make and how to respond to them, what to say, reference. And by the way, once you get over to Discord, I'll give you a link to some electronic media that I have that your eyes will pop out of your head.
Okay, great. I just finished registering. So do I search you or?
No, what you want to do is just okay. Did the Discord window open?
Yes, and I see the plus thing in the left corner, and I see
okay. Join server. Click join server.
Okay. Join server.
Paste the Discord link that I gave you.
The link that you posted. Okay, just give it. Okay. Gotta find that tab now. Okay.
And you'll pop into the chat room.
Oh, great.
Okay.
Oh, I see how you. Yeah. Okay.
Don't use your real name.
Yeah. It's,
okay.
That's just rewrite. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't give out any information about yourself personally.
No, this is a pseudonym anyway. This is not my biological name.
Okay. You should have popped into the room.
I just pressed join. So yeah.
There you go. You're in.
Oh, there we go.
Alrighty. So you like apologetics material?
Indeed.
Okay. Did you want to continue the chat on Discord or in Google Plus?
I'm feeling some real echo here. I'll get into the Discord after this, but I guess we got this hangout going right now, and then Jesus is still in this, so Jesus overall is still in this. So I guess I'll exit Discord, and then I'll say, I guess I'll know. I'll just use this link every time, or will it come up in like Discord that I've joined this before?
Okay, so what I did, I just silenced Discord because I'm hearing an echo from this room and Discord. So if you want to continue the conversation in Google Hangout.
Yeah, I just exited the thing.
Right.
I'll figure out how to mute later.
Yeah, Timothy, you're welcome to join the server there as well.
Awesome.
Okay, and now all you have to do is next time is you just launch Discord, and then
Right.
There are other Christians that frequent this room, and we can help you out with how you do stuff in Discord.
Right. All right. I'll save that. Okay. Get Discord on my thing. Okay. I think I'm gonna be set up real nice for it. Thanks.
Yeah, we have a lot of great interactions with people from all different backgrounds. Yeah, just be aware of Christian anarchists and General Han Solo. They're heretics. Yeah, don't laugh. They are.
All right. Well, I have time for one more topic. So, Tim, you got anything?
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying I don't have anything. So.
Oh, you don't have anything.
I mean, it could be anything. It doesn't have to.
I don't really have it. I said what I needed to say about what I had the topic with the street epistemology. So that's all I had. We've been going for pretty.
Yeah, check out. Type in Tim McGrew, and either street epistemology or Tim McGrew and Peter Boghossian. He has a number of YouTube lectures on Peter Boghossian. They're real eye openers. Tim McGrew is a Christian philosopher.
Yeah,
He is okay. You know who he is?
I know Tim McGrew, yeah.
Okay, do you know about his series on undesigned coincidences?
Yeah, I just ordered the book yesterday, Lydia's book on undesigned.
Yeah, Lydia, that's his wife. I haven't gotten that yet.
Yeah, I just ordered it, so I'm gonna be introduced to the argument new. So.
Right. Yeah, that's gonna knock your socks off, man.
I'm excited. Yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't have these undesigned coincidences where the Gospels just simply are written, fabricated by different people.
Right. Is it with Tom Gilson, the thing with street epistemology? Oh
yes, it is. It's great. It's a great series. The only thing that they did was they chopped it up into several different videos rather than one.
Oh, I see that. Yeah.
So, you just got to click on the next one. But it's really, really good. I really like Tim McGrew.
All right. Well, with that, I guess we'll end this hangout. Thanks, everyone, for watching, and God bless.
Yeah, I'll head over to Discord later, definitely.
Yeah, overall, why don't you pop over into the